Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast. I'm your host, Chet, and today we have artist Diaz Holm on the show. You may know him if you're on TikTok or YouTube or in the Dark Art Society group or any number of places, but kind of a weird coincidence that we had Andrew Kadima on last week, and he's kind of a social media based artist, like does most of his promotion and sales through social media. And Kim also has blown up on social media and is primarily known in that space. So thought it was pretty interesting that it just happened that way. It was totally unplanned. This has happened before on this podcast. Like guests end up being related to each other in one way or another, like in groups. I don't understand it. It's just one of those weird things that happens. Anyway, he's a super cool guy. I know him from the Dark Art Society and back during the pandemic when we were doing the Zoom meetings, the live painting and drawing Zoom meetings, hanging out. And his videos are great also. Anyway, so that's coming up. What's going on with me? I am finishing. I got some of my commissions taken to the framer, so those are done. I'm starting this one. Oop, it's kind of wet. Or started this one a couple days ago. It's a big painting for the Beautiful Bazaar show in a couple months. What's it called? Myth and I forgot the name of it, but it's mythological themed. Anyway, you can see the progress, all the progress shots, and I'll have a time lapse of this painting on my Patreon. If you want to join that, it's patreon.com/ChetZar. Also, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/darkartsociety. Both of the Patreons you can join for as little as $1 a month. And if you join the Dark Art Society Patreon, you get your name read on the air. Oh, I forgot to get the name this time. Oh, well, I'll read it next time. If there is someone. The memberships have been pretty slow lately. But you also get the podcast a day early. And if you join at the $5 and above level, you get a coupon code for I just dropped my skull. Skull Shop, SKULLSSHOPPE.com. They have amazing skulls, replica skulls. It's so funny. I had it all set up with my reading glasses on the skull, and I was going to pick it up, and then the whole thing fell apart and the jaw fell off. Anyway, I think that's it. Let's get on with it. Here we go with Diaz Holm. Hope you enjoy it. Hello, Kim.
Hello, Chet.
How are you?
I could be worse.
You look good.
I always say to myself, it's never so bad that you can't make it worse. So
that's a good one. I like that.
yeah. Always look at it from a positive angle like that.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. You know, I'm a fan of your work and your videos, your social media posts. You have really hooked into that the zeitgeist of influencer type videos, but you're representing dark art, which I totally appreciate. It's like, I think maybe you're the only person really kind of representing dark art to the TikTok community. You know what I mean? Which is like,
yeah,
it's funny to say, but you know, these things matter. These are important for the overall movement, I believe. You know, you're kind of putting it into mainstream consciousness more. than the average dark artist, I would say.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in that perspective quite. Just let me say first that it's so good to be on here, and you've had so many amazing guests before, and your work is absolutely breathtaking, and your history is, you know, so I'm very honored and thrilled to be here and to be sort of a mainstream representative of dark art. Just scared me even more because what I'm actually doing is I'm figuring out ways where I can hopefully get paid for sitting in my basement drawing things I like and talking about all the things that my wife is tired of hearing about. And it's and then people come and make grand statements about what I'm doing. And it's a very thankful position to be in. And it's very weird and at the same time, I can't act like this is all coincidence. I do want to reach a mainstream audience. I
Mm-hmm.
do want to, the minute I got to 1 million followers on TikTok, I said, how many millions can we get?
Yeah, right.
And that's just part of the sickness, part of the disease. But I do want to, however, whatever audience I get. I mean, it's most important to find a way where I can be me and be comfortable with what I'm doing and the art I'm making, and that's dark art,
Right.
apparently.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, being yourself and just expressing yourself as really the main goal. We had Andrew Kadima on last week, another guy with 1 million followers, but he's a million on Instagram. Um, that's you were in the chat, live chat, and I was like, hey, you got to come on the show because I kept meaning to ask you. And it's like the way I do the podcast is totally by the seat of my pants. I think of someone and I'm like, oh, I got to ask them. And then I forget. And then someone else texts me and I go, oh, you know what I mean? It's just totally kind of random. But so yeah, that's weird that you guys are both two kind of like social media based artists that are popping off in the social media space and you just happen to kind of line up this way. It's kind of weird. But that was sort of, I don't know how long you were in the live chat or heard the podcast, but that was one of the things that Andrew was saying was like, or we were both kind of agreeing that you have to, it's the most important thing on social media, representing yourself as an artist, is to just be yourself. First and foremost, be honest and real. And if it goes off, good. If it doesn't, oh well. It's like you can't change who you are to try and chase that thing. You know what I mean? You can kind of change techniques. You can follow some trends if you want, or do camera techniques or whatever. But you can't change who you are to suit the algorithm. I don't think, I don't think it's a winning strategy myself.
No, and I think it. I wasn't in the chat a long time, but I was a long enough time to say, yeah, next week we're just going to have the exact same podcast, and that was what I was referring to.
Right, right.
But I think that it's very easy to say that you have to be yourself on social media, and it's kind of a little bit more difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, what if you're an asshole?
Yeah, but I mean, that's perfect. Assholes do great on social media.
That's true.
And it's not just about being yourself. But first of all, I think that artists generally have a huge advantage when it comes to social media because our art is in a way, an extension of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if people find our art interesting, they will likely find our personality interesting in
True.
some way.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to chase the memes. You
Right.
don't have to chase the trends. You probably shouldn't unless it's your personality, and then you should just jump into it. But then it becomes a question of how do you show yourself? And I'm pretty lucky because I like talking. I like talking to a camera,
Mm-hmm.
and people apparently like listening to me talk. But there are a lot of artists who, for instance, are really awkward at talking.
Yeah.
And when they sit down and think, I can just talk to the camera and everything will be okay, that's not going to work,
Right.
because then you need another angle.
That's
And
true. Good
hmm,
point. Yeah, that's a
that
good
angle
point.
can be, it can be, doing uh, videos where you don't talk,
Right.
doing things that are written that are just you staring out the window at the rainy day. It can be fun
Mm-hmm.
things. It can be whatever angle you can choose to show your personality and sort of what you need to do. What you need to do. What people. What works is to try to experiment with the different vantage points you can show yourself from.
Mm-hmm.
And then when something fits, then play around with that
Yeah.
and just find interesting ways to be yourself. Not
Right.
because
Yeah, that's
be yourself,
right.
it doesn't really mean anything.
Right. Yeah, I guess a better way to say it would be authentic. I think authenticity is very important when with artwork as, especially with artwork, with creating artwork, being authentic to me is like the most important part of it, or one of the most important aspects of it. But yeah, it's important to experiment and use your creativity as an artist to making videos and presenting
Hmm.
yourself in a certain way, or presenting
Yeah.
your artwork in a certain way, using the creativity that you use to create your artwork. Just shift it towards, how do I make interesting videos, in the same way you'd go, how do I make an interesting painting or drawing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, Uh, and I guess this is a little different if you do abstract art or other non-figurative art, but
Mm-hmm.
for us who do more story-based art, that's all social media is. It is a storytelling vehicle.
Right.
And I mean, I was talking to a social media friend. And he didn't know why people didn't react to his videos. And you look at his videos and it's um, showing the whole painting first and just filming it and then going into the interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you do it the other way and you start with the interesting
Right.
point and then you reveal the whole painting, then you have a story.
Right. Right.
It,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be more
That's so.
complicated
Yeah.
than
That's
that.
very true. Very true.
It's just taking the storytelling skill that you hopefully have in other parts of your art and then applying it to how you show yourself,
Right.
even though it's often uncomfortable to have to show yourself.
Yeah, yeah, you got to get over it. You just got to get over that uncomfortable, It's like there was a certain point where I was seeing early on, I was seeing pictures of myself at shows, that people took that were posting, and I was like, "Oh man, I look so bad. I look like shit." And then at a certain point, I'm just like, "Get over it. You just, if you don't like the pictures of yourself, don't look at them. This is what you got to do." And so I just don't pay attention to them now. Not that they're like everywhere, but I mean, when I see them, I'm just like, you know, okay, I don't want to see a picture of myself or listen to the podcast. I don't even listen to the podcast because it's like, I don't like
I
listening to
I, I
myself talk.
never I never listen to myself. That's the worst.
Well,
Pictures of myself, I absolutely love as long as they show me from my good side,
yeah,
which
right.
is the outside.
I'll tell you though, what one thing I noticed from your videos is, they're very clever, they're very interesting. It's like you have a good voice. And as an American, your accent is kind of intriguing, and it's so unique that I like listening to it because it's different. It's not a normal accent you hear for Americans. You know what I mean? It's really different. And you have I'm just trying to judge it from a social media perspective. You've got an interesting look. I'm all about the long-haired hairy guys. I
Yeah,
like seeing the long-haired hairy guys that are not like Nazis succeeding in the space.
good point.
Oh, they kind of co-opted our look, but I even think the way you are posed in a lot of your videos, where your head is at an angle and at the side, is very interesting. You know what I mean? It's like you're not like looking straight in the camera. It's like you're kind of, your head is cocked and it's at an angle. And I just,
Yeah.
looking at that from an artistic eye, I was like, that's an interesting. It's very recognizable as your style of videos. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's kind of a brand, almost like a branding thing, and it's really cool.
I think people sort of underestimate how much time and effort it takes to look that confused at every start of every video. I mean, like at least 20% of the filming time is just me go
Right.
just to get which sounds silly, but it is to get that like it seems like we're starting in the middle of a conversation.
Right. Yeah.
And if I get that flow right, that confusion right,
Mhm.
then the rest usually works.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great. They're great. And your artwork's really cool too. I really
So,
I
so
I admire
it's
you.
not coincidental that I'm always looking like I'm in the middle of it. You just interrupted me while I was doing this. Hello, are you here?
Yeah, right. That's true. Yeah, but it looks good though. It just uh uh compositionally looks interesting. It looks more interesting than if you were just like kind of straight on, just kind of, I don't know. It's not that important. It's just like little things I was noticing about your
But
videos.
but actually, I think that those types of small things are more important
Definitely.
in social media than you'd think. It
Yeah.
is about just in the first few seconds. People call it like the hook or
Right.
whatever, but it's not just a hook. It is presenting yourself in what you called an authentic way in the first few seconds in a way that's recognizably
Yeah.
you. And my whole spiel with looking confused and babbling a little bit in the beginning wouldn't work if I wasn't a profoundly confused and babbling individual.
Right.
But
See,
so it's
authentic.
yeah, but it takes a lot of faking to make it authentically
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's like anything. That's like art. And that's like filmmaking, Look at these
Mm.
these amazing dramas that feel so real, dramatic films that seem so real, and it's like it's not. It's planned out. It's everything's intentional. It's well thought out. But anyway, okay. I don't want to get too hung up on that aspect of it too, because I want to talk about your artwork, and I want to hear your story, really, your life story, how you became an artist and everything. But I wanted to say, before we get into that, is I really do love your style of artwork, and I admire that that messy way of working and using a fucked up brush for your ink. It's like I look at that and I'm like, yeah, that's badass. And it's I chose I kind of chose my thing, how I present my artwork. I chose a way that I like to paint that suits me well, but I do look at people like yourself and I'm like, oh man, I would like to do that. And of course I could do that, but I'm very focused on what I'm doing. It's working for me. I'm going to stick with this because I'm happy with it. But from a playing side, I admire that, putting some few drops of ink on a piece of paper and blowing it with a straw. It's like, it's so cool. It has such a cool look. The splattering ink, I just dig it. I like that kind of like controlled chaos thing where you're just starting out water and you're dripping stuff into it. It's making these patterns. It's interesting too from a social media perspective as far as the creation.
I like that you almost got into a part about artistic jealousy, because when I, for instance, look at your work, I really like how controlled it is. And I sort of get a little bit jealous about controlled artists.
Yeah, right.
Uh, the reason why I managed to become a better and better artist, grow as an artist, is, I mean, for the first 20 years or 30 years of my life, it was mostly artistic jealousy. Whenever I saw someone who was better at me at anything, I wanted to kick their ass, and I couldn't do it, physically. So I had to do it artistically, and that took me a good way. And then it was in the recent years starting to recognize that no, I don't really have to be jealous at Chet for doing these awesome. You have these very straight compositions that are it is, everything has its place and it's exactly where it should be, and there's symmetry and there's all these textures and everything. Look, and I don't have to hate you for doing that. I can just celebrate that you're able to do that.
Right.
And I can think to myself, if I just spent 10 years to try to do that, I could do that as well. But I couldn't spend 10 years doing that because I would get bored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes a certain kind of mindset, I think.
Yeah, and probably, I'm not going to hype myself up too much, but probably you couldn't do what I do either, because
I find it extremely difficult to do things in the way that you're doing it, where it's like, the controlled chaos thing, where it's all about chaos and simplicity. I find that very difficult. So it's not my natural state at all. So I feel the same way about you as well. And Gabe Leonard and I have this conversation all the time because he's a loose painter and I tend to paint more tight. And we're always like admiring each other's technique, kind of jealous in a way. I mean, I feel that way of him, like, oh, I wish I could paint that loose. And then he's always like, man, you make me feel lazy because your stuff's so detailed. Yeah. So I think it's like with artists, it's always kind of a grass is always greener situation. But it's important that we can appreciate what we are doing differently, because we don't all want to be doing the same thing. That would suck if every artist is doing the same thing. That's not good. It's not interesting.
I mean, isn't that what AI will bring to the table?
Yeah, right, exactly. Where everything starts looking homogenized and the same.
But yeah, I think just to sum up my thoughts on this, I think for me personally, the artistic jealousy was really important, and now it's even more important to just start to be able to not just express my admiration for other artists and for people who can paint clean and for people who can paint. I mean, people can paint the most insane things.
Yeah.
And that is really wonderful. And to be able to not just, say the admiration, but to feel it, to feel that it's fantastic that other people uh, have a different sense of fun,
Yeah.
because
Right.
that's what it is. I
Totally.
find the chaos fun.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, even when I was in effects, when I was a sculptor, I kind of specialized in detail, like sculpting pores. I love that sort of thing where you're like get way in and just sculpt pores. And a lot of most sculptors in the industry were like hated detailing because it was so boring. And it's like you have to have a certain type of personality, I think, to do that sort of thing.
Mm.
So I'm like always,
I really would like to love that little tiny process. And I look at people who do that, who can just get lost in that and think, that seems so peaceful.
yeah,
It's so nice to be able to spend hours just
yeah.
dreaming away. But no, I get so bored. I
That's
get so
that's
incredibly
like
bored.
me. It's like Gabe. Gabe says the same thing. It's like he's just too boring for him to detail. He's not into it. And I can appreciate that. And that's what, that's what makes us all interesting and unique as artists. We have if we're expressing ourselves authentically, then the artwork's all going to be unique and we can all
Mm.
admire each other's work. And that's what I wanted to say also quickly. I feel that jealousy as well. I think all artists do. And I think as you mature as an artist, the jealousy becomes admiration, and it's not, it can be a driving force, especially when you're younger, like, oh man, I want to get better, I want to get better, I want to get that good. And I think as you get older, at least for me, it's sort of like you learn to admire that what you can't do that other people can do,
Mm.
and appreciate it and not have it destroy you.
It takes confidence to
Right.
admire
Yeah, right.
someone else, to admire your peers.
Right. That's confidence comes from creating a lot of your own work, I think, and
Yeah.
time, and getting older.
Confidence comes from failing miserably again and again and
Yes.
seeing that people don't care as much as you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's no better place to learn that than on the internet.
Oh,
and
yeah.
on social media. Okay, so I want to hear your story. You're in Norway.
I'm in Norway, yeah. So,
Um,
so, so uh,
were you an art kid?
let's, yeah, let's start at the very beginning. So I started frantically drawing and expressing myself with drawings when I was 1 year old.
Wow.
And then I started talking when I was 3.
Oh, wow.
And I started talking in full sentences. So my parents knew that I could communicate
Right.
because I was communicating through miming, through art, through looks, through all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just apparently waiting until, I mean, single words. Who does that? I want to recite sentences.
That's what my mother-in-law did. That's
Yeah.
the story of my mother-in-law. Super smart. She was very smart, had 2 master's degrees, but she didn't start speaking until she was 3, and she started in full sentences.
Yeah.
Isn't that true?
And the problem with that was my language never became quite natural.
Mhm.
So I don't speak a Norwegian dialect. I just speak this kind of mishmash of this hodgepodge
Oh,
tongue.
interesting.
And I used to get harassed at school for the way I spoke.
Oh,
So
no.
when I got to social media and people said, "Oh, I love your voice," I became like, I'll punch you." But they meant it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Your
Yeah.
accent's cool and interesting, and maybe that's why it's so unique. Not that you're
Yeah.
Norwegian, but because even for a Norwegian, you have a weird accent.
Yeah, definitely. And then, I hated school, so
Me too.
all my English I learned from, from heavy metal albums and from video games and
Really?
movies and comics.
Huh.
I learned English that way. I learned to
Wow.
write from Microsoft Word. I mean,
What a trip. That's cool.
and yeah, so basically, growing up, both my parents were kind of broke all the time, but my mother studied to become an art historian, and my father was an artist or is an artist,
Oh, cool.
and a really, really good one who,
What kind of art does he do?
when I was a kid, he was doing a lot of pencil art,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and he basically started drawing when he was like 21 years old,
Hmm.
and a year later he was better at just representational drawing than I'll ever be.
Wow.
Uh, so he was really talented that way, but he sort of hated the art world and the gallery, uh, going to the gallery openings and mingling and all that stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
so he sort of try to go out there and do a little bit of performance art and have a few exhibitions and stuff. And then he just sort of settled to doing his own kind of thing. So first he bought us kids a Commodore 64 computer when we were small,
Mm-hmm.
and then every time we got a new art program on our Commodore or on our Amiga, we had to show him a little bit. And then in the 90s, he bought a Mac and he started doing like photo manipulations and photography art.
Mm-hmm.
Now he does that to a very select little audience, and he does magnificent work. But for the few hundred people who follow him on Flickr, I think.
Oh, really? His work's out there. Okay, you're gonna have to send
Yeah,
me a link after. I want to check it out.
absolutely.
That's something we have in common. Artist fathers. My stepdad was
Interesting.
also an artist. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I got a lot of encouragement to do the art stuff, and then when I was 8, I read a Daredevil comic by Frank Miller.
Mm-hmm.
It was an episode called Russian Roulette. I still remember it. Daredevil is written and drawn by Frank Miller, inked by Terry Austin, and colored by Christy Shields. I remember all those names still, and it was a really like one of the very Miller stories. So it was dark and psychological, and it was about media violence. And I was 8 years old, and I was like, I don't understand any of this, but it's making me feel a little bit queasy and uncomfortable, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to make this feeling in other kids.
I had the same
Uh,
experience with what Creep. Remember Creepy and Eerie magazine, the comics Creepy
yeah,
and Eerie. I had that.
yeah,
I'm not sure how old you are. I don't know what our age difference is, but that was for me like when I was 8 to 10. My friend's dad had these creepy and mixed with the Playboys. He had Playboy, Creepy, and Eerie, and we'd of course sneak them and go look. But the Creepy and Eerie were so violent and creepy and eerie, and I just remember like that same feeling, like that uncomfortable kind of like, ooh, I shouldn't be looking at that. This is weird, but I couldn't take my eyes off it. It was like, oh, but I love it, but it's making me feel weird. You know what I mean? I want to
yeah.
do this. Yeah, I want to do
So,
this to other kids.
yeah.
That's great.
I want to inflict this upon other kids. Mm.
It's a way.
And from
It's
that point on, in my head, I was a comic book artist.
oh, okay.
And that was also I did get distracted by partying and drugs and all the fun stuff
Hmm.
in the teens.
Hmm.
Uh, but I was always in my head a comic book artist.
Did you make your
Uh,
own comic books or anything, or
oh
plan
yeah,
them
I,
out, or draw them
I
out? Or
I started making fanzines when I was like 14 years, 13 years, printing them, stapling them, going to comic book
cool.
conventions and selling them,
Oh, cool.
bothering older artists, bothering my heroes with them. So, one of my greatest like experiences was bothering John Buscema
Oh, okay.
with, the Conan
Hmm.
artist. And he's a big hero of mine. And I met him at a comic book convention in Bergen. I was 17 years old, and I had just started doing these improvised autobiographical comics directly with my brush. And
Wow.
that's not what Bushima was into.
But that wasn't
And
even a thing back then, was it? I mean, that was pretty unusual to do
yeah,
see autobiographical comics.
yeah, no, in Norway, the underground comic scene was it had a lot of weirdness and it had a lot of autobiographical
Oh,
stuff,
okay.
but mine was very different still because it was very much based around the American stuff.
Okay.
So had a lot of influence from Buscema, from Kirby, from Will Eisner,
Hmm.
from Frank Miller, from all the image guys and stuff like that. But it still had that Scandinavian underground
Cool.
feeling, and it was a pretty realistically drawn uh, autobiographical little short, and it had the classic like 6-panel grid like the old Kirby and Buscema comics. And Buscema he wasn't happy that day. He
Oh
had just
no.
been doing a talk, and everyone was asking him like, "What was it like working with Stan Lee?" I'd put a bullet through his head. What was it like working with Ernie Chan? I'd put a bullet through his head. And that was his standard
Oh my
reply.
god.
And I after that I came up to him and he was about to leave to his hotel, and he was tired and he was grumpy, and I came up to him stuttering like, hey, Mr. Bushima, could you please look at my comic book? And then he took it and said, okay. And he looked at it, and it was in Norwegian, so he couldn't understand anything. And he got this scowl on his face, and he grunted and said, mm, mm. Actually, this is quite good.
Oh
And he
really?
left. And that was like, oh,
That's amazing.
I'm on my way.
That's amazing. That's so
But
cool.
I think I talked about this recently with my friend Scott Christian Sava, who does the opposite of dark art, I think.
Hmm.
And I think what Bushima recognized, hopefully, what was that I was basically doing his kinds of layouts and his kinds of storytelling, but just in a different, with a different, um, uh, with different content.
Hmm.
I hate
Yeah.
the word content, but yeah, with different content.
That's cool. I mean, that's what a inspiring story. I'm sure it spurred you on to continue with the comics,
Oh
getting the
yeah,
seal of
but
approval.
I was more interested in the drugs at that time. At the
Okay.
time, so but it was really inspiring, and I did, uh, yeah, I did a lot of different underground comics and stuff, and then um at the same time, I was trying to understand the sort of the rhythms of what I later discovered was my bipolar disorder.
Mm. Wow. Okay.
Uh, yeah, so I was having these really long, dark, depressive periods where I couldn't quite manage to work on my comics. And then I started getting these periods where I was, well, I got better. I got inspired. I
Mm.
got very well. I started working on my comics like through the night. I worked,
Wow.
with barely a few weeks of, barely a few hours of sleep a week.
Wow.
And I just made so much stuff. And I would never be depressed again. And then after a
Right.
few weeks of that, I crashed and burned and right down in the depression. I didn't quite get what was going on. Um,
That's common, right? With people, bipolar people, that once they get in the high state, they think, oh, that's why I've heard that they can stop taking their medications because they're like, oh, I'm all better,
yeah,
because
yeah,
they're in that high state and it seems like it's never going to go back down. And then
yeah. Of course, I feel great. Why should
right,
I have any medication?
right,
I'm the king of the world.
yeah,
And it took a lot of these, and because of the rhythms for me were so slow that it took a lot of time to understand that they were rhythms.
mm,
And then after that, it took a lot of time for me to understand what those rhythms actually said about me and my plans for my life. Because I started working professionally with comics and illustrations around 2004, so in the middle of my 20s.
mm-hmm,
And I thought, yeah, I can do this. I could do really good work, and I could. I had a comic book voice that I liked. I had something I wanted to say. I did work that people liked, but I didn't notice that it took so much effort to get back to that same state of mind.
mm-hmm,
So I wasn't really working as much with comics as I was feeling guilty for not working enough with my comics.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so the guilt of not being in the right headspace took up more time than my comics making. And I did, a self-published version of H.P. Lovecraft's Pickman's Model
oh, cool,
that I'm extremely proud of. I think it's a good comic. It's sort of how I envisioned adapting Lovecraft should be done, and it was good reaction. But I spent it was 100 pages, and I spent 3 years torturing myself
wow,
over it,
yeah,
and and that wasn't feasible. So after about 15 years of doing the comics and illustration thing, I had to fail at comics and become a poor lowly artist instead. So I fell from grace and became a damned fine artist
yeah.
instead.
Same here. I was in the movie business, but I jumped off and fell on purpose.
Hmm.
Just to go back to your mental health, how long were was the rhythm, like how long were your depressive periods and your high periods, like how
Yeah,
just curious.
yeah. So I'm diagnosed as bipolar type 2. So that means my high periods are not full blown manias.
Okay.
I don't get psychosis. I do lose a little bit touch with reality, but not in the sense where my perception of the world might go a little bit askew, but I'm not imagining things.
Okay.
Um, so basically, and this is the same today. My rhythms are that I spend a lot of time in sort of a medium depression.
Hmm.
Most of my time in a medium depression, and then once in a while I have everything from a month to a year in a deeper depression.
Wow.
And then once in a while I pop up and I have 2 or 3 weeks where I just um, don't. I think I don't need to sleep anymore.
Wow. Okay.
And the most important thing I can do in those high periods to not get into the lowest period right afterwards is to actually manage to get some sleep.
Okay.
So if I go a week with only 2 hours of sleep, that's much worse than if I go a week with 10 hours of sleep. That's
Right.
much better.
Right.
So it's just, figuring out.
Are you are you managing it with medication? If it's not too personal to ask.
Yeah. I've tried all the medications,
Mm-hmm.
and they threw the whole medication book on me,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really unlucky with a lot of it. So, for instance, with lithium, it worked. Lithium, I don't know how you
Yeah,
pronounce
that's
it,
it.
but
Lithium.
it worked. But I got a shiver
Oh no.
on my hand, and it was like, I mean, I could start drawing like Charles Schultz
Right.
peanuts, but then again, talking about the artistic jealousy, I
Right.
can't draw like. I mean, he drew fantastically with his slight
Yeah.
shiver, but I couldn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to stop that, and now I'm finally been a few years on Suloft of
Oh, okay.
everything, like the Ween song, "Give me that said OLOFT," and it doesn't help a lot, but it helps a little, and it gets me to sleep a little bit easier at
Hmm.
night, so that's good.
Okay. Good. Good. Yeah.
And the rest is managing it with, trying to manage it with, exercise and diet
Diet
and
and all
all
that.
the boring stuff.
Yeah, all the boring stuff I was gonna say. Yeah, I think what is the type of bipolar where you hallucinate? There's a type that you hallucinate because I think my dad had it. That's what we think.
Mm.
My biological dad, because he would see things, and he would also have these kind of highs and lows. He's from the generation where it's like he would never get help. He died that way. It was just sad. He never had a chance to really
Yeah.
live his life. But I think he had the bipolar that where you kind of hallucinated, because I mean he literally saw
Yeah.
things, physical things he would tell me about
Yeah.
sometimes
So
that weren't
I'm not a trained
there.
diagnostician.
Sorry, you represent all
Don't
bipolar people
take
now.
don't take this as medical advice, but I think the classical bipolar, the bipolar one with true manias, uh, the true mania is signified that by it going over into psychosis, and
Okay,
psychosis can have elements of hallucinations.
yeah,
But that's the thing with all these mental health things, is that they're as different as the person who has them. So
right.
it could be bipolar with some sort of schizophrenia. It could
Right,
be,
right,
it could just be a heavy mania. It could be that these are just names we put on
right.
things,
Yeah.
and
In order to talk about
yeah,
them, you got to put names on them.
yeah. And it seems that the names aren't exactly brain surgery, or at least brain surgery isn't exactly brain surgery. It's it's all we don't quite know as much as we like to think we know
Yeah,
about these things.
so true, so true. Especially when it comes to the brain.
Yeah, and we do know a lot more than we used to. I mean, I was so fascinated by, Hieronymus Bosch, the
Mm-hmm.
painter.
Oh yeah, one of my favorites.
He has this painting of the Philosopher's Stone, where the operation where they remove a little tap of the bone
Mm-hmm.
inside the skull, and they put the lid back on,
Yeah,
and it made people calm.
yeah, right.
Who would have thunk?
Yeah.
So it's much improved from Bosch's day,
Yes,
but
yes.
there's still some ways to go, and
That was a
all these categories we put on things, they are useful as long as they're useful,
right.
and once they stop being useful, we should realize that actually reality is always more complicated and fascinating than any category we can put on it.
Absolutely, absolutely. There was. I remember. Yeah, trepanation. Trepanation. They used to call it, where they would cut holes, and there's a video I think from there's people that were into this, like in the 80s. I was reading about it. They were like, this is the secret to enlightenment. And there's a film that some woman made where she drilled a hole right here in her head. It's a black and white film. Yeah, so freaky. And the idea was like it would let out pressure, and that would stabilize the pressure and around your brain or something. It's so freaky. It was like some weird fringe thing. That was
Yeah.
happening. I don't.
I think this might have been something I've come in touch with at some point.
Yeah.
We call it research.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Fascinatingly, they found like really old Stone Age
Right,
skulls
with holes
uh,
cut out and
with these holes cut out, and those holes having healed,
yep.
so the patient lived through them. So brain surgery is old.
And then they found other ones where it hadn't healed, so it's like, oh, they died while they were doing
Yeah,
it because they have you win some, you
you
lose
win
some.
some, you lose some. It's
Okay, so once you started you kind of made a conscious decision, like I'm going into fine art now. I'm gonna not do the comics. I'm gonna really focus
yeah,
on my own
yeah.
work. And then how did you, I don't know, what was your plan? What did you do next?
My plan was to stalk the Dark Art Society Facebook page and try to send stuff to those galleries.
Mm,
And I was starting to get a little bit of work accepted as some of those I found through uh, through you guys,
mm.
and that plan was going wonderfully until two things happened in 1 week. The first thing was that a friend of mine, uh, a sort of economist type person, rock and roll economist type person,
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, sent me a message and said, "You should check out this TikTok thing. I think if you post your art there, that might be it might be a thing." And then the same week, Norway locked down
Ah,
from
okay.
COVID, and I, at that point, I was stuck at home with a wife and two kids
Mm-hmm.
and homeschooling, and I was lucky, so I could. We have the mountain, and we have a fjord right by, so I could, run in the mountain and swim in the fjord. But just the pressure of being home with the kids at all times and having to activate them and be homeschooling them and all
Right.
of that stuff, and then TikTok just taking off quite quickly, and that made me forget all about galleries for a few years.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you go with what's
now I'm back
working.
to, hmm?
You go with what's working.
You
You
go with
follow the
what's
thing with
working.
what's working for you.
Yeah. So now I'm back to stalking the Dark Art Society Facebook page, but I haven't started reaching out to galleries yet. But
Well,
that's
the thing is with the kind of following you have, having a large following on social media goes a long way to getting shows, I think, nowadays. So I bet you can get some decent shows at some good galleries with, you know,
yeah, and I do also hope so, because one of the things that sort of got me uh, got the TikTok to take off, and then the YouTube and all the other stuff to take off, is that I'm able to work very quick, and I could easily do like one or two or three videos a day
hmm,
sometimes with new art.
mm-hmm.
Because most of the art I did took like between 5 minutes and 30 minutes,
Wow.
and that was it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
That I'm jealous of.
yeah, but the thing is, I start having done that for a few years. I started to get jealous of people like you who can spend hours
Yeah,
and days
weeks
and
and
weeks
weeks.
and months,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of fun you can do with things done in 10 minutes,
Hmm.
but there is also something you're missing.
Hmm.
And I sort of uh, probably will hit the balance around a couple of hours, because then then I get bored.
Yeah.
But there is value in, not necessarily in taking a lot more time to draw stuff for me, but in taking a lot more time to know that what I'm drawing is saying not exactly what I wanted to say, but is saying something in the right area that I want to say things in.
Right.
And the daily art, it's very hard to say something more precise when you're working at that pace.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And I think we talked a little bit about social media, and I mentioned the categories, and also things like artistic jealousy. And I think one of the things that happen, at least for me, is I tend to get really fired up on my own ideas, and I just go all in. I say, "This is me now,"
hmm
and then I get bored. And and you know, which is, in a weird way, is a strength, because
hmm
then I can move on to the next fun thing
Right.
and the next fun thing, and it creates this constant evolution. And I'm not saying that you guys who actually do one thing for a long time don't have that evolution, but you have that in a different
Yeah. I think
different way.
I think it's a slower evolution over a longer period of
Yeah,
time. I think when you're doing paintings, I don't know. I feel like I've definitely I've evolved, but it's happened over years and years and years. You know, slowly. You know what I mean? Not like real abrupt.
yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to try something new now. It's more like a gradual thing.
Yeah, and for me, it is a lot of jumping around. It
Hmm.
is like, ooh, I want to do this all the time. Ooh, shiny object, must have. And it's
I don't think that's super uncommon with artists though, because
no,
I know that it's it's pretty common, and I felt this way too when I was first starting, especially when you're starting out. You kind of want to do everything. Like
oh
it's
yeah,
hard to nail down to pick something and stick with it because you just, you know, creativity is creativity. You know, you're creative, you want to do all kinds of different creative things, you know? So it's kind of a discipline to make yourself stick with something, which a lot of artists, myself included, have trouble with. I'm just like, I can stick with what I'm doing because I enjoy it that much. Like I just feel satisfied from it, you know? And when I don't, I change it up a little bit, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that because I've for all these last few years of I mean, just the drawing directly with ink is something I've done um, since guess since 1997 when I'm at Bushima,
Mm,
and I just started doing that. And uh, for the first half of that time span, I was probably still doing more work with pencils and more work with traditional comic book style
mm-hmm.
penciling, and then slowly it evolved, especially through I do these extreme metal live concert art things.
Yeah, yeah, I wanted to ask you about that too.
And that was really sort of important to getting me both back to the ink and the brush and back to traditional mediums. And without that, I wouldn't have started the Ink Monsters years later. And
Right.
so there is a continuation, but it is also a continuation and an evolution that it's a consistency, but it's a kind of wide consistency, and it allows for these ooh shiny up,
Yeah.
ooh I must have that things, and that is again, it's a matter of being authentic to who you are,
Yeah. As an artist, yeah.
because that's that is me. I do
Yeah.
want the new shiny object,
Right.
and and I do admire. Uh, I mean, people like Charles Schultz with his Peanuts, who did that comic book for was it 60 years? I don't know how
I
many
know.
years before he took his first vacation and died.
Is that what
Okay, so the
happened?
vacation. Okay, I might be making this up, but as far as I understood it, and as I'm going to retell it, he had gotten he gotten the message from his doctor that he had terminal cancer, I think,
Mm.
and instead of uh, instead of dealing with that, he said, "Yeah, I probably need to take a little break from Peanuts," and that break ended
He
up
took
being eternal.
yeah, yeah, he took a longer break.
Yeah, a longer break.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the band thing. Oh shit. Sorry. I just my bubble water just went crazy. You know, you doing these band gigs where you're drawing at the side of the stage, which is really cool. Um, tell me, how did that happen? And what is it? What is it really? I mean,
Yeah, that's a good question. How it happened is I, like a lot of artists, I was and still am broke all the time. So I had tickets for the Hole in the Sky festival in Bergen, in my hometown, because I especially wanted to see two bands, and they were Urfaust, a fantastic uh, um, black metal band from Holland, who
mhm.
does most of their black metal is in the waltz tempo, in
Oh, okay. One,
the
two,
three
three.
tempo, and
One,
not,
two,
not in
three.
the,
1, 2, 3.
which is a great tempo for black metal.
Ah, okay.
And I wanted to see Rotten Christ, who are Greek black metal legends.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so broke that I had to try to sell my tickets, and no one wanted to buy them. So I brought along a sketchbook, because I thought, people buy beers for artists, don't they? And I started. Udfaust was the first concert, and I started just sketching them in my sketchbook with this brush pen, and I just, from the first few lines, I thought, there is something here that sort of reminds me of the music.
Hmm.
And then at the second night, when Rotten Christ were, the first night Rotten Christ was headlining, and I started taking breaks from drawing to run down and headbang, and then draw a little bit more, and then the second night, a American band called Suffocation, fantastic technical death metal band that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know. I had heard a few songs here and there, but I had no relationship to it. But when I started drawing them, I started moving while drawing, and started splashing the ink around, and I just saw that this looks like the music. I need to do this more.
Hmm.
And then I've been doing it for 14 years now.
Wow. So at this
Uh,
point, are you going and like talking to the band, like, because you're on the side of the stage on some pictures I've seen.
yeah. Quite often the band wants to see, and
I mean, are you
sometimes they
presenting
don't.
yourself as like, can I come to this show? And
It depends on the festival. It depends on the circumstances. I mean, bigger bands are more difficult, uh, and usually I tr the more the festival can do, the better. I don't like going around, um, begging all the bands to draw them, but I need to know that they are okay with it, because it's a weird thing.
I imagine
And
most of them would love it.
yeah, most of them do love it, and most of them get a kick out of seeing the art, especially right after the concerts.
Hmm.
And and the backstage is a really weird area, because I have spent all my energy sort of inwards, taking in their show and trying to get it down on the paper. And it's a kind of intense mental thing going
Hmm.
on, headbanging and drawing and trying to find this sort of violently meditative flow state.
Hmm.
And they've done the same, but outwards.
Right.
So my energy it's all improvised, and it's all taking in stuff.
Hmm.
and their energy is all planned. It's the set list, and they're all shouting the things out
Right.
and projecting out. So it can be a very weird place backstage. But some of the bands are just some of them are weird because I'm weird, and some of them are super pleasant. I mean, some of there are bands that every time I draw them, I do go and talk and say hello and show them and grab a beer or a pizza or
Mhm.
whatever. I mean, and once you get that connection, it is actually quite cool because then you can go and talk art with some people for
Yeah.
a few minutes and then off to the next show.
Yeah. That's cool. It's a cool little I mean, I know a lot of people do that at like a lot of the visionary artists kind of do that at sort of more techno, I don't know what the music is nowadays, like kind of like DJ sets. It's more of a
Yeah.
common thing there where they go on stage and do it, but you don't hear a lot of live drawing at black metal shows. That's pretty
No,
unusual.
I think my ego always told me that I needed to be the best in the world, and I didn't know I just needed to find such a small niche that no one else is dumb enough to do it, and then I can be the world's best extreme metal live concert
Yep.
artist.
It's all about finding your niche.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, but in honesty, it is a first of all, it's not as easy as it looks, and it doesn't look all that easy.
Mhm.
It is a really intense experience, and it is sort of it has a lot of in common with meditation and with dance and with performance and stuff like that, but you still have to I have to respect the band, and I have to respect the audience. I'm not there in to be in the way of
Right.
anyone. I am very much I'm a part of the crowd,
Right.
not a part of the photographers.
Right.
And I have to sort of find ways to be respectful of the experience while also managing to lose myself in the music. And when I started doing it, I wrote down a list of bands that I just had to draw one day. And I think last year I checked the final band of that list.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, the final band was Nile, death metal band from the States.
Mhm.
And it was fantastic, and it was such a pleasure. And at that point, I was sort of thinking of, yeah, maybe this has gone on long enough. Maybe it's time to do something different. But I had so much fun doing
Mhm.
it. And then I went to another festival, Tons of Rock, which was more kind of mainstream rock and uh, uh, a lot of bigger headliner acts and stuff. And that's more difficult to draw, but I got the chance to draw one of the first metal bands I got, or hard rock bands I got into, TNT, which was a Norwegian hard rock band where uh, the hits Kings of Seven Seas and what 10,000 Lovers in One, and they were huge in Norway because they had an American singer and everything,
Oh wow.
real rock
What
stars.
what year
And
did what year did they come out, or what year were they big?
I mean, I think that Kings of Seven Seas is 84, and
Oh wow.
I think that probably 87 or yeah, 87 for 10,000 Lovers in One. And so I was a kid
Right.
when they came out, and I got the chance to draw them, and I couldn't say no to that. But it was kind of weird and not the thing I usually do. And
Right.
then I got there, and the guards were all a little bit weird. "Oh, we don't know where you can stand and do this," and the stage was way too high, and I didn't have any place to put my drawing board, and so yeah, I still have to do it, and I started, you know, holding my drawing board and uh, standing and drawing like that, not leaning it on anything. So I couldn't really headbang that much,
Hmm.
and it's not that headbangy music. It's 80s hard rock,
Right.
and and my back ached because I had been going for a few days already, and I wasn't quite in that space. And suddenly I started moving my butt to alleviate the pain in my back. And suddenly things loosened, and I started drawing some of the best concert drawings I've ever done. I started dancing
Wow.
while drawing, and it sort of opened up this whole new possibility for me,
That's
because
cool.
now I can't just, you know, when you're drawing extreme metal bands with the corpse paint and headbanging and all that, you don't really need to be all that particular with a portrait likeness and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
right.
Now it is if I can branch out to draw all these other kinds of music that I also love, that then there is at least, 20 more years of growing as an artist, trying to learn how to capture different music. I'm sort of uh, at the starting point
Hmm.
again,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm looking forward to all the new fun stuff I can learn.
Yeah, that's so
So,
interesting. Do you have a record of all of these drawings? Do you have the originals or at least scans or photos of them all?
yeah,
Because
so
I can imagine that would make a good book.
oh yeah, so I have I make too much art. That's the problem. um, so, and I also release all my art for free use. So everything I do, I scan,
Yes.
and you can download it, you can copy it, you can print it, you can even sell it as long as you put my name on it.
This is something I wanted to talk
So
to you about also.
yeah,
But yeah, go on.
there's a lot of topics here.
I know. Sorry.
I think
You're an interesting guy. What do you want me to say?
just 5-hour podcast. That's the thing. It's 2024. God damn it.
I won't keep you too long.
Oh,
But I do want to
oh,
cover the copyright thing
no,
before we go.
yeah, absolutely. But
We're saying a book. I think a book would be amazing
yeah.
of all of
So
your
yeah,
concert.
I have around I don't know, 2,000 concert drawings or something like that. That are available for free use.
That's insane. Wow.
Something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about this copyright thing. This is really your copyright stance is very interesting. And I only have issue with one thing about it. Or I just want to push back a little on one aspect of it. But tell me your position on copyright for art.
I don't like it.
Okay.
I a little bit in a little bit more detail. I think that having the copyright of your own works in this current version of capitalism we're living in is a lot better and safer than giving it away to corporations. So I'm not saying that everyone should give all their art away to corporations. I don't think you should be stupid, but I also think that copyright both is it's the wrong way of protecting artists because it gives power to corporations,
Mm-hmm.
because no matter what you do, they can always hold it over you that, yeah, we'd pay you a little bit more if you just gave us all the rights.
Right.
And also it is contrary to the nature of art. All artists stand on the shoulders of giants.
Mm-hmm.
We stand on the shoulders of those who come before us, and we steal all the time from our contemporaries as well, even though we don't admit it and don't. Sometimes we don't even think about it,
Mm-hmm.
but we do, because we incorporate all of this stuff into our art. Art is a communal thing. Art is speech, in
Mm-hmm.
a sense. It is protected as speech. That's why you have laws that protect artistic expression, is because courts think of it as speech.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very weird to say that, no, no, I said this, so you can't say it. That is a very
Right.
weird thing. And I also think that, because we think of our art as a commodity, as an object we can take ownership of, we start behaving dishonestly with our art. We start saying, I really wanted to draw this Batman comic, but instead I drew this completely original hero called Night Hero.
Bat hero.
Yeah. And so it's sort of, it teaches us to hide our inspirations instead of proudly displaying them.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates this sort of a weird artificial originality that I don't think it's good for art. I think, yeah. So the short version is, I don't like copyright because I think copyright is killing art
Hmm. Okay. I
in multiple ways.
right. Okay. Yes. I've seen you talk about it on your videos, and it's definitely a compelling argument. Now, my issue, I think it's a capitalism problem more than a copyright problem. It's like, this is how we have to survive, and copyright is part of how we can earn a living. Because, I mean, maybe you've obviously found a way to not make to have your stuff not copyrighted and make a living. But it's like, I don't even know how. I've never had to invoke copyright to like stop someone from. It's like, unless it was some big company taking my art and using it to sell something where they made a bunch of money from it, then I would have an issue with that. And that's really the only real issue I have with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
yeah, but I can completely understand that. But at the same time, you're saying this yourself, that you haven't really had to
yeah.
invoke copyright all that much, and that's the same for most independent artists.
Mm-hmm.
Don't really have to invoke their copyright that much, because they're either working on something new, which is something people are willing to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
They're working on a unique object like a painting, which is something unique that people are willing to pay for. They're working on, they give classes and courses. They
Right.
do all of these other stuff that aren't reliant on copyright. And
Mm-hmm.
most of those whose work or money income is tied to copyright are those who work like you did in the movie industry,
Right.
where your creative work is put into someone else's copyright.
Yeah, true. Yeah, yeah. That's
And
a
so,
good point. Yeah.
yeah. And also, um, one of the side effects of that is that people grow up and dream about landing that film special
Mm-hmm.
effects job. They dream about working for Marvel or Disney or for Blizzard or for uh, whatever Hollywood studio. They dream about this, so that this allows huge companies to take young, hopeful artists and overwork them
Mm-hmm.
until they quit because they're burned out, and then replace them with another generation of artists who have grown up dreaming of doing this stuff.
Right.
And every generation of artists that they burn out adds to their value. And it's not that this is only positive for corporations, it's also negative for the corporation, because this the fact that the product becomes so much more valuable than the people making it does make it easier to lose the institutional knowledge that corporations should have. Disney used to have these grand old men of Disney that had worked there forever and that could teach the younger generations of artists. And now most companies don't have a whole lot of people who have worked there for
Right.
30 years or 40 or 50 years,
Those
because
days are over.
yeah, so that, in the end, uh, that abuse of the idealism of young artists ends up hurting the product itself, because you lose the institutional knowledge that actually heightens the quality. Disney was made its name because it had better quality than anyone else,
Mm-hmm.
and you sort of can't say that anymore about them.
All right.
They're good because they have the money to be good, they have the name to attract good people, but they don't have that institutional knowledge anymore. And if we, for instance, moved from a system where the income is based on stopping the copying of a work, and where income is instead based on economic rights through attribution. So
Mm-hmm.
so basically, the attribution parts of copyright today in international copyright law are separate from the copyright. Attribution is eternal. It is you can't sign it away unless you do some weird work for hire things.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we could say simply that if your name is on a product, you have the right to little bit of that income.
Mm-hmm.
If your name is on the credits, you should get a little bit of that split. I don't know how many work on a movie, but you split it 1,000 ways. That's not a lot of money, but it is still a little bit of money for everyone,
Yeah.
instead of a lot of money for the copyright owners.
Right.
And that would also have the side effect of forcing corporations to actually invest more in their people instead of in their products, and perhaps even occasionally treat artists better, because establishing a good relationship with the artists and establishing a business that has institutional knowledge, that where the people attract other artists to it, would be of more value than having the hottest IP that they can kill. And that's what, look at Disney now. They're actively killing every single of their IPs by not quite knowing how to exploit them. But they're trying to exploit them again and again,
Right.
till people are tired of Star Wars, and they're tired of Marvel, they'll be tired of Indiana Jones, they'll be tired of all of these properties because the properties are worth so much and the people are treated with such little care that in the end the properties become worthless.
Yeah, it's true. It kind of ruins the art, by wringing too much, just wringing it for everything it's worth and getting every last dollar out of it, and doing these reboots and these sequels and stuff. It's like,
and this will only get worse because now we have generative AI art.
Yep.
And that will, for the first time, allow and executive producers and idea men to fulfill their own ideas cheaper, but without paying artists to save them from themselves.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Most great Hollywood movies in the types of genres that are very much headed by the producers, in action genres, all of those genre films, most of them are saved by, if they're good, they're saved by really dedicated, overworked artists who make a great thing despite the idea man.
That's this is what I always say about, I just said it on the last podcast, I think, about working in the
repetition.
Yeah, how I felt like I was crazy because I'm like fighting to make their product better and they're fighting me to make it worse. And I'm just like, this is something that makes you go crazy. Why, you're trying to make it shitty and I'm trying to make it good. You're paying me really well to try and make this thing good, but then you're keeping me from making it really good, because it has to be like this thing that made money before,
This has been the way it was, since the early days. I mean, both Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, who were genius storytellers, after just a short while refused to even speak to Stan Lee.
Yeah.
So basically they wrote the stories, they put in placeholder dialogue, they drew the stories, and then sent the finished story over to Stan Lee, and he wrote in the finished text.
Yeah.
And Stan Lee wasn't that bad because he had a way with words and he had a car salesman type marketing that really worked and that was really impactful at the time. But not all, I mean, most producers and idea men are not Stan Lee.
Right. Yeah.
They are they are the cheap version of Stan Lee. And when they don't have artists to save them, they will ruin everything by themselves.
Yes.
And I've been playing a lot around with AI art these days. I think it's super fascinating and it's super fun and it's super scary. But the thing that is the scariest to me is that making AI art is almost like the exact opposite of creativity.
Right.
It is making you into an executive producer instead of
an artist,
working with the creative process and just being so frustrated with yourself because you can't quite manage to say the thing you're trying to say.
Right.
You sit there and wait. And when the AI gives you back something different than you asked for, you get pissed off at the AI,
Right.
like a producer.
Right.
While I mean, this isn't a healthy sign, but artists, we get pissed off at ourselves
Yeah. Yeah. But that's part
because
of the that's so the important that's such an important part of the creative process is getting pissed at
that's the
yourself that you can't do it, and then and reaching deep inside and making yourself do it and getting past
yeah
it, and then that's like such as that's at the end you get this huge reward, you
yeah,
know?
and I think that if you are an artist who are trained in working in traditional creativity, you can probably use AI in ways to help your
Mm-hmm.
artwork. I don't know what those ways are yet, but yeah, you can do it because you know the feeling of creativity, and you know what this should feel like. But for kids growing up, they or for executive producers who are like kids but worse. I'm sorry, there's probably nice producers in hell. Um, uh, for them, this will seem like creativity.
Right.
They will like. I mean, there is this fantastic interview with Stan Lee in a film I think it's called Searching for Ditko or something, where a British journalist is trying to find Steve Ditko, and he puts sort of Stan Lee on the spot because Steve Ditko claims to have made basically everything with Spider-Man, and he puts Stan Lee on the spot and says like, now if you agree that you only made the name, would hypothetically, would you still say that you're the creator? And he goes, yes. I, that's not creativity. And
Yeah.
if you let if you let Stan Lee, sorry for Stan Lee fans, be very funny, very loads of good things to say about him. Not doesn't seem creative. If you let him have AI and he can type in Spider-Man, he would think he had created Spider-Man.
Right.
And that we're going to see more and more people type things in and think they're being creative. And that's more than anything, it's a loss for them because creativity is kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. I feel the same way. It's like my I because messed with it a bit when it first came out, and my initial reaction was I could see a use case for like I need a picture of a horse from a certain angle and I don't have the reference for it because I don't know horse anatomy that well. So if I could, make one in AI so I could have a reference to work from, that would be useful. But in general, I felt like, this is taking the funnest part out,
Hmm.
which isn't thinking of the idea. The funnest, for me, the most fun is creating the thing and painting it and figuring it out and troubleshooting and thinking, oh, this would be better than this. These colors would work really cool. Which I guess, in a way, if you're doing AI renders over and over and over to get what you want, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, but you're still waiting for someone else
Right.
who
Yeah. Yeah.
manages to follow your instructions or not.
Right. Right. Yeah. 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 So it's yeah, it's not the same in that way. It's not really the same because there's also the how there's been so many times where I had an idea for something and I started working on it and it was like, this needs something. And then I do something wrong and that looks better. and I go, oh, that gives me an idea to do this. Or even coming up with a title, like, oh, randomly associating a title. Oh, this makes the whole piece work is this title. And it's like those kind of things, those happy accidents, it doesn't seem like you would get them in the same way from AI. But
not in the same way.
Yeah.
And I think also, I mean, the most interesting visual use case I've found for AI so far, and I haven't played around with it more than a few months, so I'm not deep into it yet. I'm going to jump in the deep end, but I'm not quite there yet. But the most useful thing I've found is when I do concept work for others' creativity, is to check what the AI makes from those prompts, from those suggestions, and if that looks like my idea, then I can assume that my idea was a little bit too generic.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because it's going to make something based on the average of what others have done. So it's sort of check myself and see, have others done this before? Okay. Yeah.
Right.
I don't have an imagination. I need to redo this.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a good idea.
But before we go over to anything else, I just wanted to say one thing about AI that I think is important, and about that this is about AI and copyright. And there are a lot of well-meaning, well-intended artists and art lovers who are going around saying we should stop generative AI art. And there's all sorts of good arguments for why we should stop AI film and why we should stop voice, generative voice things. You can use this for all sorts of scams. But the problem with those who want to stop AI art is that they are suggesting we do it by requiring companies to own the licenses or the consent of artists in order to make generative AI art by them. And this makes sense. The problem is if we manage to make that into law, we have just given a monopoly on AI art to Disney and Microsoft and those other few companies that own so much licensed art.
That's true.
That they can actually generate lawful AI. And I dislike a lot of aspects with AI art, but I don't think it will be better if Disney decides what we can do with it.
Right.
That's the wrong way to go.
Yeah.
About it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a good point I should have made in the beginning of the episodes while people were still listening. Before they fell asleep.
Well, we're going to have you on for a second podcast in the near future if you're interested in coming back, because there's definitely stuff I wanted to talk to you about that, we're an hour 40.
We didn't even get to the witch ritual.
That's what I wanted. That was the next thing. I was like,
okay, do you have time to talk a little bit about witches?
I have time. I didn't know. I don't want to keep you. I don't want to take advantage of your time. But if you have time, I'd love to hear about it. Because
my wife and kids can wait. I mean,
this is dark art.
We're talking about witches here.
Yeah, I saw that a little short clip, and I was like, that was another level. Oh, wait, I have to say this before we get onto that. My main thing about the copyright issue is that I always go to is, okay, what if a Nazi or someone like totally an evil person takes your art and it becomes the logo of their white supremacist band, or and they're making money. I would not like that. Or a big
So
corporation taking your art and making a bunch of money.
this is interesting because, as I said earlier, we have copyright and we have the parts of intellectual property law that deal with attribution.
Mm-hmm.
And those are under international copyright law are colloquially known as the moral rights.
Mm-hmm.
And the moral right is the right to attribution and the right to protect your good name and reputation.
Mm. Okay.
And finally, the US was one of the final countries to join the international copyright community and accept these moral rights as well.
Mm.
And the thing is, everyone today uses copyright to protect themselves, but these two laws are actually really powerful and could be used in just that example, because if the money is tied to the attribution, then yes, you can get a little bit of change from whoever earns money on your work. But if you still have the right to protect your good name and reputation, you can actually, even though your work is outside of copyright, you can say, yeah, you are free to use my work, but you're not free to use my name on the work, because the thing you are doing is hurting my good name and reputation, and you're not allowed to use my work without my name.
Ah, okay.
So
That's interesting.
there is actually, under current day law, there is a method for doing just that without the copyright part.
Okay.
The problem is, of course, everyone uses the copyright part instead. So these are more or less sleeping laws, and they have to be tested in court to see how they work. But in principle, they should protect my free art from just that.
Okay.
Even though I've given it away under a Creative Commons license.
Okay.
Will it? We'll see. That depends on my lawyers, I guess.
Okay. All right. Now, witches.
Now witches.
I could not believe. I was like, that was extremely brave of you to do. You know, that was a brave thing to do. I don't think I could have done it. I couldn't have done it. It's like,
So,
naked, getting your blood letting, creating.
yeah. So let's describe what happened.
Describe what happened.
So,
naked bloodletting.
That's it. That's everything. Black metal is a sort of politically not a very wholesome genre of music.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very male-dominated space.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this a band called Witch Club Satan, which is a great name, made out of originally three actors who decided to that what they were trying to do fit best as a black metal band.
Oh.
The only problem was they didn't know how to play instruments or anything, so they learned to play instruments in order to do feminist black metal witch rituals.
Oh, that's cool.
And they got help from they got an education from some of the black metal legends from Mayhem, Jørn Stubberud from Mayhem, and basically it is this weird black metal art witch project, very feminist and very based around the ideas of a feminine sexuality that isn't just cute and
Right.
but is violent and scary
Hmm.
and a bit fucked up. And I hadn't actually listened to the band, but I had heard from various uh, various black metal elitists that no, they're not true black metal. They just play black metal naked in order to get the black metal money, which is a strange
Yeah, the
thing to
black metal
say
money.
because
I didn't know there was black metal money.
there is no black metal money. It's if you become the biggest of the big in black metal, you can get a uh, uh, like an upper working class salary.
Right.
So that's the biggest of the big you get.
Right.
Um, so I mean, if that was their plan, then that would be so profoundly stupid that I would support it. I mean, but I sort of dismissed them because I probably don't need to uh, draw a band just because they play naked. I mean, it's okay. And then I got a message from one of them asking if I would be interested in doing something with them, and I just took a quick look at their Instagram page. I thought, oh, this isn't what I thought. This is actually cool. They are doing their own art. They're doing all of these weird concepts. This is cool. So I just said yes because they asked me if I wanted to draw with blood, and yes, I want to draw with blood. It was a ritual. I want to draw with blood, but at that time I hadn't even heard the music. They look cool.
Mhm.
They have a nice sense of aesthetic, and I get to draw with blood.
Mhm.
And then we started talking about what they wanted, and they had their first album was just released, and it's a fantastic album, which I hadn't heard of at the time. And they wanted to do a listening session for journalists inside a
Ah.
great big mausoleum, like which is by that was decorated by this romantic age artist. So it's just a huge mausoleum, a vault filled with kind of cheesy paintings of naked people and skulls because it's the romantics. What are they going to paint but
Right.
naked people and skulls? And the acoustics in there are just amazing. And we uh, sat down and talked about what the event was going to be, and it turned out that they were like, you can't play loud music in there. So the journalists and the guests were just going to be sitting there with a headset on,
Ah, okay.
and since the witches couldn't play their music, they were just going to be laying in caskets, in coffins,
Hmm.
and there was going to be a choir and everything, and the only entertainment for the journalists and fans would be me painting with blood, drawn by. We had a nurse to draw the blood, so it was all very,
Right.
very safe, very, very, very professional. And I sort of didn't realize how impactful it would be until it started. And
Mm.
I had this idea that, they are a feminist black metal band, and I'm not a woman usually. So I had to become a temporary woman for the evening, and I had to learn, the drag queen tucking and taping and
Oh, really?
doing all of that stuff.
That's what I
and
mean by brave. That's a brave thing to do.
it hurt a bit. I'm not a professional tucker yet, and um, because I wasn't all that good at this taping and tucking, we had to pour some. We used a little bit of fake blood just on my area
Uh huh.
in order to conceal the tape.
Okay.
And suddenly it just looked awful because it looked like I had been castrated on the spot.
Wow. That kind of
That
works for
it
that
didn't look
situation.
nice.
Yeah, but that seems appropriate for that whole
Yeah.
situation. That there's a
I don't
symbology
want to
there.
talk. I don't want to talk a lot about what happened during the whole seance because it isn't. It's not something that can be articulated
Hmm.
in words well, because it was an extreme event and it was a transcendental
Yeah.
thing for me. I wasn't supposed to be myself, and I was truly myself and other in some way. But what I can talk about is what happened right before the ritual started,
Hmm.
which also was a part of the whole magic of it. And first of all, the nurse had to take quite a lot of blood from me because we had to have some blood to start with.
Hmm.
So she tapped my blood. I did the mistake of looking at the full little glass of my blood and got all dizzy. And then someone shouted, "It's 1 minute till it starts." And the
Wow.
choir started just humming this one note again and again that was supposed to be there when the audience entered. And I found a spot out up in the darkness right over a spotlight. So I was half blinded and just looking at this spot where I could see some gray shapes. I couldn't see what it was, but it was probably part of the paintings.
Hmm.
And then, these are journalists. They're not on time. Half of them had taken the wrong subway. So instead of sitting there 1 minute and staring at that spot, I sat there for 10 minutes staring
Wow.
at the spot with these this witch choir
Wow.
singing just one note again and again, and this spotlight blinding me so I couldn't see when anyone entered. I could just hear noises here and there, and I didn't dare take my eyes down because that would ruin it. I couldn't be looking around.
Right.
And then the shadows just started swimming and moving. And
Wow.
in those 10 minutes before it started, I saw everything that I tried to draw for the whole 45 minute.
Wow.
And it was cold. I was naked. It was uncomfortable. Um, it was it was just a delight. Every painful little part of it was just amazing. And I also, because I wanted to be a comic book artist originally,
Hmm.
and then I tried to take care of my bipolar and my mental health, and I had all these attempts at becoming this thing becoming this thing that's very much relegated to my head, that my art is made in my head and pushed out through my fingers through my brush.
Mm-hmm.
My words are made in my head and they're pushed out through my mouth. And through the through the metal through the metal concert drawing, I knew that the body was important in this, but to use the body itself as a tool for expressing art was just so eye-opening. Yeah, it was just for me to get connected with that part of myself. So outside of the magic the of the ritual, and I truly believe that all art is in essence magic.
Mm-hmm.
The words we use to describe art are the words we use to describe religion and magic.
Yeah.
It is, we can't talk about it in any other sense. You can't talk about it in the scientific language.
Right.
Or there was a magic in that event that will remain as sacred as I can leave it. But there was also this magic in, just being there, sexless and bleeding, and cold and crying.
Wow.
And just feeling that, yeah,
that's amazing.
My body is art as well.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. That sounds like they accomplished what they had hoped to, which was, I mean, I'm assuming they're legit and they were trying to do a full-on ritual and embody the spirit of this album in a kind of religious or spiritual way.
I don't know how it felt for all the audience. I've seen there's been some articles. You don't expect journalists to get much.
Right.
But I've seen some articles from people who thought it was a fascinating artistic experience, but truly didn't get the ritual part of it. And some who seem to have gotten a hint of the ritual. And I also talked to others who were in the audience as fans who definitely got what we were doing. But I am almost 100% certain that those of us who were actually involved in the ritual, we experienced something we couldn't otherwise have access to. It's something else.
Yeah.
And
transcendent.
Fun times, as we say.
Are they real practicing witches?
You will have to talk about that with them. I think I can't.
Because it seems like, it seems like something witches would do.
It seems like something witches would do. I'm not trying to be coy or anything. I don't know how to define a real witch. I don't think a real witch is defined by whether or not they say they are a real witch.
That's what I'm saying though, is like
but there was a real intent to create a transcendental experience, and it worked for those of us who were a part of it.
Okay, that's funny that I would say that. Are they real witches? Which it's kind of dumb now that I think about it, because we're both agreeing that art and magic are the same thing, and artists are witches or whatever you want to call them, magicians on a spiritual level. Or
Trollmenn, it was in Norwegian.
What's that?
Trollmenn, we say in Norwegian. Trollmenn.
Oh, okay. Trollmen?
That is the old word for a magician or witch.
Oh, cool.
In Norwegian. Trollmenn and trollkvinne.
Oh, that's awesome. But I get my point being, it's like I was asking if they are real, if they are practicing witches just out of curiosity, and it's like, but if they're artists, they're creating a performance art piece. That's the same thing. That's not different.
So
It's like yes, they are practicing artists, witches, whatever you want to call it. It's like kind of the same thing. Creating a
the honest
transit.
answer is I haven't asked them
Right.
about how they practice in their day-to-day life. I have talked with them about the intention of that ritual, and that was bloody serious in all its hilarity. we we know it's funny, but it is real. It
Right.
is. We know it's stupid. It's absurd. It is. It's just weird.
Yeah.
But to experience it, to be a part of it, is not any of those things.
Right.
That is bloody serious
Yeah.
business. It is trying to reach something which you can't reach by any other means.
Right. And
Which is the same with art.
That's what I was just going to say. It's like, art is also trying to, art and magic both try to change the consciousness of the viewer. It's like, or the practitioner, or, it's like we're trying to change consciousness in a way.
Yeah.
And
we're changing experience, and the world is our experience.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't see anything except our experience. Well, this has really opened up a whole lot of new possibilities for me. So I'm going to do a performance together with a fantastic visual artist and musician called Kostin Chirano. And we're going to do it at the Inferno Metal Festival in Oslo this Easter.
cool.
And it was going to be more of a plain reading, or in my mind, it was going to be more of a plain reading of Lovecraft's prose poems. But because of this witch event, it's going to be more of a performance. It's still going to be the reading, but it's going to take on another much more corporeal and vocal and challenging passion.
Wow.
And right now I'm in this headspace of still just thinking about all the possibilities for how I can use my body as a work of art.
That's the essence of performance art. Is using the body.
Yeah.
And performing.
And it sort of goes almost full circle because I talked a little bit about my parents, and they,
right.
In my childhood, I was a part of their performance art shows.
Oh, cool.
So I was doing these kind of weird meditative performances as a 10-year-old kid.
That's amazing.
I was playing my part and with fake blood at that point, but some blood. so it's all full circle, I guess.
That's incredible. Wow. Okay, I got to ask you one last thing before we wrap it up. Just regarding this ritual, is this something you have been into before? Are you into all this weird shit? Magic, spirituality, that sort of type of, the stuff. You've heard me talk about it. I mean, are you into that?
I'm probably not into it in the same way as you. You seem to be more well read when it comes to a lot of different types of practices.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm kind of more of the I'll make it up myself.
Right. Okay.
I'll make my own shit. It is kind of the difference between our art styles as well.
True. Yeah.
Uh, but
So you would be
from
more of a chaos magician if you were to be
oh yes,
classified as a type, because that's the whole chaos magic is all about
yeah,
like it's in your head, you're creating reality, you create your own rituals, you make up whatever works for you, and it still works
yeah,
because it's more about intention and focus and concentration and stuff. So you would be more in that, which I
yeah,
totally relate to as well. I mean, I find that
yeah.
the most
But
interesting way.
from uh, at the time when I was showing John Buscema this brush drawn autobiographical comic, that was what I was actually starting to experiment with.
Oh,
It
okay.
didn't start as a ritual or magic. It started with a fascination for Japanese Shinto Buddhist art
Okay.
and Zen Buddhist art, and how Zen Buddhist artists would use meditation in their art practice.
Mm,
And the way this comic was drawn was through meditation
mm,
and through drawing things I saw in front of me with directly with a brush and just taking whatever I could get out of where I was at that point, that moment, and that uh, that was sort of my entry into looking at art as a spiritual practice,
mm,
which happened in the late 90s. And over the years, this meditative practice has expanded to include more and more ritualistic elements when appropriate.
mm.
And for instance, you know, the headbanging I do when I draw metal concerts, that isn't just because I get lost in the music. It also is in order to lose myself in the music.
Right.
It is
Yeah.
these,
Yeah.
uh, I'm putting myself in this sort of a dervish-like
Yeah. Yeah. Trance state.
state.
Hmm.
And you know, I've done experiments with these types of meditative art practices and with ritual, with drawing with my own blood, with magical symbols and all of that. And I am very staunchly atheistic and scientifically minded,
Hmm.
but I also am unapologetically spiritual as well. And I don't think we can talk about art or artistic experiences without that religious language. And I have to keep that duality in my head that yeah, I relate to this physical world that can be described with science, and I don't believe in a lot of mumbo jumbo, uh, but I believe in the power of experience. And I also believe that this is, as far as I can see, probably kind of cosmic in the scale. I don't think I've seen no proof that that consciousness or experience is exclusive to humans or living things or
Right.
anything. I mean, I think I think if we were all the same stardust, then
Right.
maybe you know it's I don't see myself as much special in in relation to this plastic doohickey. It is, and I try to. It's difficult to live by that because I do think I'm more special than a plastic doohickey,
Right.
but I know that that's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
That's the magical
that's
perspective of looking at life, you know?
one of the most. That is the most important thing I've learned from AI is that I always say thank you and please to the AI because otherwise I would interact so much with the AI that I would start forgetting to say thank you to humans, which would be bad.
Yeah.
So instead of using AI to become more rude, I'm using AI to remind myself to say thank you to this chair for holding me up
Right.
so long.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to the clouds, and thank you to all different inanimate objects that, strictly speaking, don't need you to say thank you to
Right.
them, but maybe
Yeah.
I need to say thank you to them.
I thank my printer all the time. I talk to my printer. I talk to my vacuum cleaner. We've
Yeah,
got a name for the vacuum cleaner.
we 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 don't know a lot, but we experience the world as if it's a conscious thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it starts to rain and I forgot the umbrella, it's my fault that it starts to rain because I forgot the umbrella.
Right.
The gods do do these things to us, and this is how humans experience the world. And I think we should take that seriously.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is the magical perspective or the artistic perspective that everything is alive, that everything is connected. I mean, these are kind of like,
I think this is the human perspective as well.
yeah, right. Yeah, because you have to be,
Probably,
yeah,
maybe the cosmic perspective.
yeah.
If I'm going to talk out of my ass, then yeah, I'll say that.
Wow. Well, that's a nice little bow on the end of this thing. What a great
We
conversation.
just solved the whole universe.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone's enlightened, so I can stop doing this fucking podcast. Well, thank you so much for coming on. That was an excellent conversation, like I knew it would be, but even better.
I had so much fun, and I'm glad we got to solve the universe together.
Yes. We'll have to put our heads together on another problem next time. But hopefully you'll come back.
The
on
multiverse next time.
Hopefully you'll come back on again in the near future,
Anytime.
or especially if you have any projects you want to talk about, or just for the hell of it. But yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you. And don't hang up. But you have to say goodbye to everybody. Remember how I say goodbye to the audience? You have to say goodbye to the audience. Remember? That's what I always do at the end of every episode.
It's been so long since I've seen the end of an episode.
Well, you don't have to do anything other than say goodbye, audience, or whatever you want.
Yeah.
So you just
Shall I do it now?
Yes, just say goodbye. In whatever
Thank
way
you
want.
so much for listening to me blabber on. And goodbye. Have a nice day.
Thanks everybody for listening. Goodbye.